This video is going to focus more on equations that have multiple steps, including distribution, combining like terms, and variables on both sides of the equal. This equation here has both a variable and a constant on both sides of equal. We want to make sure that we have all variable terms on the same side of equal and all constants on the opposite side. I start by looking at the variable. So I have 6r on the left and 7r on the right. That means that I should be able to remove 6r from both sides. So if I subtract 6r here, that should go to 0. And subtracting 6r here should leave me with 7 equals 13 plus 1r, or just r, since the 1 is understood to be there without writing it. Now I have a constant on both sides. I want to try to get the variable alone, so I'll subtract 13. So negative 6 would be the value of r to make this equation balance. This equation has distribution and variables on both sides. So let's start with distribution. If we distribute the 7, we should have 35a minus 28 minus 1 equals 14 minus 8a. At this point, I would go ahead and combine the two constants on the left side, and this can be tricky because of the signs. So you do have to make sure you pay attention to the signs in front of them. This is a negative 28 minus 1. That's how it has to be treated because the sign in front of it does matter. Negative 28 minus 1 would be negative 29. But a very common answer that I would see there would be minus 27, because some students will do 28 minus 1, which is 27, and they'll forget that it's not 28, it's negative 28. So just watch the signs. Now I have 35a minus 29 equals 14a minus 8a. It would be fairly simple to add 8a here to make that 0, and add 8a here. So we would have 43a minus 29 equals 14. Now I can make this constant of minus 29 be 0 by adding 29. So that's now 0, so we have 43a equals 43. And if I divide both sides by 43 to find out the value of just 1a, I will find that a equals 1. Now, obviously, this equation has a lot more steps than the previous two. You have two sets of distribution, you have 4 variable terms, and also several constants. So let's start with distribution. This first distribution of the 8 probably will not cause any issues. That will be 8x minus 24. Based on the pre-assessment and just experience with this second set of parentheses is where people will make mistakes. And that is because of this being a minus 3, which needs to be treated as a negative 3. So if you have negative 3 times x, that should be negative 3x. Most people will get that correct. That's not going to be the problem. It's the second term that's going to be the issue. So the negative 3 times the negative 1 should be plus 3. So negative times a negative should become a positive. And most students are going to leave that as minus 3 because they're not going to distribute the sign, and it has to be distributed with the value. So just make a note of that on your notes for yourself because it is always an issue. I'm just going to bring down the right side. I could go ahead and combine like terms there with the variables, but I'm just going to bring it down, and now I'm going to do combining like terms all at once. You can only combine like terms on the same side of equals. So even though there are x's on both sides, I cannot combine them without trying to eliminate one from each side. So if I look here, I have 8x minus 3x. Again, keep those signs with them. Signs are really important when you're doing equations. 8x minus 3x would be 5x. Then I have negative 24 based on its sign in front, the leading sign, because if you subtract 24 from something, you don't have anything to start with, so that should take you down to negative 24. And then when you add 3, now you should be at negative 21. So please watch those signs. On the other side, I have 6x minus 5x. That should be 1x. So x plus 7. Since you have variables on both sides of equal, I would eliminate one of those. They're both positives, so I would eliminate the smaller positive variable term, which would be the x. So if I subtract x, that would be 0. Over here, if I subtract x, 5x minus x is not 5, it's 4x. So I have 5x's minus 1x. Now I can eliminate the constant that's with the variable, and that's the 21. So I will add 21 to make that 0, and add 21 to both sides of equal. So that would be 4x equals 28, and then divide by 4 to make it just 1x. So x, or 1x, is equal to 7, would be the value that makes this one true. And most of you are going to be able to do the majority of this just fine. It's going to be the negatives. So this 3 here, and then when you're combining like terms, treating that 24 as a negative is also a problem. So just be careful, careful, careful with signs. So I'm going to have you try this one on your own really quick and input your value, and then we'll check it. So here, again, when you're distributing the 4, it is a negative 4, so make sure a negative times a negative should result in a positive. Then I don't think the 8x minus 16x will be an issue. I think most of you will be fine with that minus 8x. Just should be plus 12. And the next issue that most people are going to have is when they go to move this 12. So when you move this 12, if you mark that one as a negative, then you're probably going to go negative here. But 0 is a perfectly acceptable value. It will happen. That means that when you divide 0 by 32, you will get 0. So that's fine. X can be 0. What some people are probably thinking of is when you can't divide by 0. So I couldn't have 32 divided by 0 with the 0x being at 0x. But we will talk about those type of problems where you end up with 0x. That's a little bit different. We'll talk about those at another day.